Welcome to Poor Patrick Productions. I'm your host, Patrick. Today, we're going to cover the basics of filming, part one. In this part, we're going to cover the action axis line, we're going to cover basic framing, and we're going to cover your basic shots. So go ahead and sit back and relax, and we'll jump right into it. Everyone starts off differently, I realize that, and I wanted to start off with the action axis line because it is so important. And it's something that people break all the time whenever it comes to this rule. The action axis line, it's also known as the 180 rule or the line of action. What that is an imaginary line that is splitting your subject down the middle so that if you're operating on one side or the other, you're not jumping back and forth. And what I mean by this is, so 180 degrees. So if you go around to the back middle of my head, in the middle of my face, that 180 degrees. So you don't want to just jump over here to the other side, because if you do, it can be very jarring and it'll actually snap your viewers out of whatever you're trying to convey to them, and they're going to wonder what happened. You saw it in action with how it actually would look if you just jump from one shot to the next shot, and how jarring that can be, and how it just doesn't look right, it doesn't feel right. And you're wondering what happened, what went wrong. You know, I wanted to show you that example of it so that you have an understanding of why you don't want to just jump from one side to the other. There's actual ways that you can get from one side to the other that does not jar your audience and will actually keep the flow of what you're trying to do going forward. We'll cover more on how you go from one side to the other in part two of basic filming whenever we actually go into the shot progressions. So let's go ahead and get into framing. When you think about framing, think about the rule of thirds. You're dividing the screen up into 9 equal parts. You're basically taking 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines, and you're spreading them out in equal spacing. And that creates your 9 little areas. And that breaks it up into basically the rule of thirds. Now, you want to place your key elements along those lines, along those vertical and horizontal lines, and even at the intersection. Now, this creates a more dynamic shot, makes the composition feel more natural and more balanced. So having someone framed to the left or to the right of the screen and having empty space on the other side of them, it can still be very balanced because you're balancing the space that's being taken up by the subject versus the space that is empty. So the size of that space that is empty versus the size of space that your subject is taking up. So that's a way that it can be balanced, and that's also how it can lead from the one side of the frame to the other side, because the subject's on that other side. You're taking that viewer on that little trip to your subject, and it's something that's really easy to follow. A lot of times you'll actually frame up stuff and not even be thinking about the rule of thirds. And then when you go back and look at it, it's like, oh, hey, it's the rule of thirds. Sometimes you do want to frame your subject in the center. And, you know, if there's emphasis on the subject, you want it front and center. You want it to be the most important thing. And you want that to be what's consuming the viewer. So that's going to be in the center. A good example of this is YouTube videos where the speaker is dead center of the screen because they want all the attention on them and what they're saying. Putting the rule of thirds into practice, we're going to go over our shots. Now, the basic shots are a long shot. This is a shot that frames the subject from a distance, showing the entire body of the person or the subject, and it's also wide enough that it's showing enough of the surrounding area. It's showing a lot of the surrounding area. Now, the purpose of this is to establish the setting or context of the scene. It shows the relationship between the character and their environment, and it conveys scale, isolation, and enormity of a situation. One of the main uses for a wide shot is to establish the scene. It establishes where your character's at, where your subject matter's at. It's establishing what they're doing. It can also be used in action sequences where there's multiple characters. So you don't really want to miss anything. You don't want to miss a movement. So you're showing the full character. And because there's multiple, you got to go even wider to make sure that you can capture both of the subjects or all of the subjects, depending on how many characters or subjects are in your frame. The second shot is a medium shot, and it frames the subject from about the waist up, focusing more on the character while still including some of the background. Now, the purpose is a balanced focus between the subject and their environment, provides more detail on the character's body language and interactions, and useful for dialogue scenes where the setting is still relevant. You may also want to use it in scenes that show facial expression as well as the background and keeping it in context. So the medium shot is also good for showing some action as far as with a character that is using hand movements or hand gestures. The third shot is a close-up. You're framing the subject's face or a specific detail like hands or an object, tightly filling the screen with that part of the subject. So whatever subject you're using, if it's a person or a product, you're filling the entire screen with like the person's face or a detail of whatever product you are showing. Now the purpose is it's going to highlight emotion, expressions, and important details. It creates an intimacy or intensity, drawing the viewer's focus directly to the subject. It emphasizes the key moment or objects in a narrative, and you're going to use it for emotional or pivotal moments where the character's facial expression are crucial. You also use it to draw attention to an important detail like a hand gesture, an object, or a reaction, or a product logo. Something to that effect is one of the reasons that you'll use a close-up. You also create a connection between the character and the audience. So in the next video, we're going to go over the shot progression, meaning going from one shot to the next shot, telling a story. And then we'll also talk about overlapping action. Hit that subscribe button, like button, and leave a comment and let me know what your thoughts are on what you want to try to accomplish in your video journey. I'd love to hear some feedback from you, and I'd love to actually have a discussion on what it is you like about video and what you like about filming. So go ahead and leave that comment below, and until next time, get out there and start creating.